All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. I'm Lisa Given. I'm Director of the Social Change Enabling Impact Platform here at RMIT, and I'm very delighted to be midway through our Social Change Symposium. We've had a very exciting week so far, and I know a number of you were out at the keynote on Monday, so thank you for coming to that. We've had workshops already, a few more to come this week. But it's my great pleasure to be welcoming you to our second of two keynotes for the week. What I would like to begin with is an acknowledgement of country to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation on whose unceded lands we conduct RMIT's business today, and to respectfully acknowledge ancestors and elders past and present. What I would like to start with before we get to our main event is to introduce Professor Sarah Teasley, who is here. I just want to read your official title, Sarah. Professor of Design and Associate Dean for Research and Innovation in the School of Design here at RMIT, and she is going to say a few words on behalf of the college. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Welcome to all of you. And I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're joining today, or which we're meeting, and to note that always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I just wanted to welcome you all also to, I guess, to join my my welcome to that which Lisa has already given to the Social Change Symposium in the College of Design and Social Context. Those of you who are in the College of Design and Social Context will, I'm sure, be familiar with what I'm about to say already. But in effect, from the university's strategic plan and all of our aims and intentions, as as set out in the strategic plan, and as carried out and enacted in the research and the teaching that we do here, it is very much about research for impact. Impact can be many things, but in this sense, it's impact for positive social change, where what positive means is not set out by us, but is agreed by the industries and communities with whom we partner in conducting our research and teaching. And the Social Change Symposium certainly inhabits that space with presentations, talks, workshops, keynotes, very much embodying this spirit of how we work in the College of Design and Social Context. The symposium forms part of a suite of symposia that we hold twice annually here at RMIT. Actually, some are held more often than that, but the idea for having a symposium for postgraduate research really comes out of just the benefits that are gained from presenting to a group of peers in public, the types of reflection that can occur, in a very practical sense, the networking, but just the sense of community, and then that peer learning that emerges when we're sharing our research together at whatever career stage as a researcher we happen to be. So the Practice Research Symposium at RMIT began several decades ago, I believe in the 1980s, and I'm not going to give an exact year because we're being recorded and I will get it wrong, but very much establishing this model of sort of spirits of generosity and communal learning and reflection together in situ as a community, and then repeating this process twice annually, in order to be able to build on previous conversations and previous reflection and learning, to gain new learning and to support each other through the research process and through that process of being an HDR candidate, which can be quite challenging at times, as I'm sure many of you know. So we currently have three, as I've said: the Social Change Symposium, the Urban Futures Symposium, and the Practice Research Symposium. These map on also to our core research themes across the university that map most closely to the college around social change, urban futures, and design and creative practice. So this event today is part of many conversations around social change happening in HDR candidates' work at the level of many different research communities in the college, across our schools, across our disciplines, and also across the university. Hopefully that's reasonable. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote for today, and I'll just remind you that following the keynote, we will have refreshments, so please don't run away, stay and eat and enjoy, and our speaker will be here at the end as well to answer some questions. We're going to have a bit of a Q&A period after the talk. Professor Blair Kuys is our speaker today, and he is currently Associate Dean Research in the School of Design and Architecture at Swinburne University of Technology here in Melbourne. I've had the pleasure of knowing Blair for several years because we did work together at Swinburne, and what you're about to see today will probably really blow your socks off because I know a great deal about many of the projects that he's worked on over the years. He's a very active researcher who's been really instrumental in embedding industrial design research theories and practices in traditional manufacturing fields in order to sustain and grow productivity. So he's really embodying that idea of bringing theory together with practice in order to make change in the world in a very positive way. And he's worked with a wide array of partners coming from a wide array of different areas and sectors in his work. He's received over $8 million in research income. He's had 22 different products go directly out to market, and he's won 3 consecutive Good Design Awards for his products with Atlite Skylights in 2018, 2019, and 2020. And he's received a total of 7 Vice-Chancellor's awards at Swinburne, which is the highest accolade that the university gives. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Blair.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for the wonderful introduction. So I'll give a bit of context. I certainly don't want this to be a boring presentation. The worst thing is going to keynote speakers and sitting there half asleep. So hopefully you do learn something here. I've put effort towards trying to actually showcase a bit of the work that I've done at the back end of this presentation, but the front end is more around where do good ideas come from, how do I gain inspiration, and certainly hope that you guys can learn something in terms of how do you gain inspiration. I'm quite biased towards the industrial design discipline because that's me, but hopefully there's learnings here just in that overarching creativity discipline that might translate. So a bit of a personal introduction. I graduated from RMIT. I did a communication design degree. I just saw Nicola rock up, who's a communication designer, but I'm about to say I didn't particularly like communication design. I finished that degree just around the corner from here, and I still use it a lot, but I then was exposed to industrial design and got offered Monash, RMIT, Swinburne. I chose Swinburne because my mum liked Chapel Street, and at the time that's where Swinburne was. That was my decision making. I pursued that degree. I really loved it. It was nice to get out of the computer side of things and be a bit more 3D and practical, build things, rip things apart. And then graduated in 2003 and went off and became a furniture designer, which was always my passion. I worked for a company in Preston and I was the chief bed designer, which doesn't sound too fancy. You have a mattress and you kind of just put a bit of wood around that and there's your bed. But at that time in the early 2000s was when big box television started to become quite flat and there was the plasma screens that came out. My claim to fame within that company was to design a bed that had a television on gas struts where you press a button and the TV just goes through at the end. And it was really positive. It sold a lot. The company was booming. And then it became quite competitive in Southeast Asian with Southeast Asian imports for furniture. And the company called all the employees in one day and said, we're moving to Indonesia. And basically we were all out of a job unless we wanted to go to Indonesia. I was 23 years of age, did not particularly want to relocate. So I was unemployed. I went back to Swinburne begging for teaching. I was begging for anything because I was not getting any money. And they offered a PhD scholarship. And without sounding naive, I didn't really know what a PhD was. I had no interest in pursuing research career. And they gave me a flyer. I look at it and I thought, oh, no, it's not for me. And I went home and looked at the scholarship, which was $500 a week tax-free. And my salary at the furniture place was $470 a week taxed. So it felt like I'd won the lottery, went back, applied, got the PhD. and I've been stuck in the university ever since. But I should say stuck. They've been wonderful to me. I was teaching a lot. Back then it was 36 hours a week, trying to put your research within that. They've since made rules around not teaching so much, but I was then course director for industrial design. I then became department chair, and it was nice pursuing that academic career, but the thing that I was really lacking was the ability to design, and I missed the ability to engage with industry and design. So in 2011, I went out and started just speaking to various companies and understanding the opportunities that existed, and started to get projects with industry that were supported within the university. And fast forward to now, I've been able to engage with over 50 different companies on a whole heap of different exciting projects, which is what I'll show here. But it's a nice spot now where I'm still supported within an academic environment. I'm pumping out the papers as best as I can, but I'm also able to engage and design, and that's fun. It's hard to balance, and there's a lot of challenges with that. But that's sort of where my background lies. And you can see all of these companies in the logos. Most of them are manufacturers looking to innovate. And in many occasions, they just don't know how to. They want to innovate, but they don't know what to do. So then going back to where the ideas come from for me, it's always looking at the historical context. So new innovations are usually aligned to manufacturing change. So the Industrial Revolution, where steam power was starting to turn a craft-based model into mass-produced products. Linear production lines attributed largely to Henry Ford and being able to create more efficient products. Then robots entering the factories in the 70s and 80s, again, all around efficiencies. But there was always design requirements. Industry 4.0, which is more the combination of digital tech, innovation and machines. And now this Industry 5 landscape, which is humans working with artificial intelligence and being able to co-create in an environment. But the thing I always look back at is machines just make things. They're good, they're important, they're innovative, but humans design things. And that's something that, in my opinion, AI won't replace, is the empathy, the creativity, the innovation, the ability to think about something new, because we're dealing with all of these AI platforms that are only as good as the information that already exists. And that's why I don't see PhD education all that threatened with AI, undergraduate maybe, but we've got to be able to put forward an innovative approach to what we do. And I really like showing that where important, the creative disciplines, I believe, are going to be stronger and stronger. And that then goes here in terms of the skills of the future, and an audit by the World Economic Forum in terms of what are the key skills required in the next 3 to 4 years, and specifically looking at the innovation, the originality of thought, the creativity, the problem solving. And for me, this is what I always put forward, because I don't know about RMIT, but you're a technology-based university. Swinburne is a technology-based university. There's a bias towards STEM education. That's great. There's a real need for that. But STEM education is going to need a human endeavour as well, and the ability for people to lead, create and innovate is always going to be important, but I see it as the most important attributes. So it's nice to be able to put these slides up and try to advocate for what we do and promote that creative discipline. You then use exact case studies to show the importance of this on a global forum. So any industrial designer in the room would know who that bald guy is on the left. It's the wonderful guy that revolutionized Apple, Johnny Ive, and that's Tim Cook, Apple's CEO, on the right. And basically, Johnny Ive turned a boring cream computer that was exactly the same across every platform into something that was design-led, and that was the Apple Macs that came out in the late 90s. The company was almost bankrupt, and he was able to revolutionize the product range. And Steve Jobs was the founder of the iPhone, and Johnny Ives was the designer of the iPhone. And they put a lot of emphasis in prioritizing design as a point of difference for their products. The reason I use this example, because Johnny Ives a few years ago resigned as the chief designer for Apple, and the share price overnight lost $12.9 billion like that in one night. And that shows how important it is. Obviously, he's a hero designer that revolutionized the company, but using this in context shows that if you have design leading your organizations, you can make a lot of money. You're differentiating your product range. And this shows the serious effect of losing these key personnel within the organization. They've since crept up and the shares are still around $200 each, which I wish I had some. So you're looking at some theory behind that. So how do we be creative? Creativity is simply the act of making something new. So I always try to break things down, and I've got my projects at the end, the 10 projects in 10 years that I'll talk about, and try to dig a bit deeper into what we were looking at. How did we actually engage the original thought? But then for me, it really is getting out there and observing the world. And for me, 2002, I was a naive Aussie student. I had an opportunity to study exchange in South Korea. I'd never been out of Australia before. And I went and applied. I got this scholarship and went to Korea, and it changed my life. I became a much better student, but I just was able to observe a different culture and a different level of understanding. I grew up in the Dandenong Ranges in a place called Emerald, Puffin-Billy territory. And I barely left that environment until I went to Seoul, South Korea. So I'm in a township of maybe 2,000, and then the next day a city of 18 million. It was a big contrast, but it really opened my eyes to what's out there. I've since had the pleasure to travel to 75 cities around the world, and it's something that I really encourage everyone to do, is get out and observe the world around you and look at things differently and understand where opportunity lies. So this is an example of how you be creative in terms of a biomimicry example. Looking here, it's just a burr, and a French mechanical engineer observed walking his dog, and these burrs got stuck on the dog's fur, and it was a real frustration. He was picking them off, and he had a better look at them and understood how the hook-like mechanisms connected to the fur and created Velcro. And this is a true story. A French engineer, he went on to sell 55 million meters to the shoe manufacturers, and now is responsible for a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that was just original thought, looking at something that exists, understanding how it works, and translating that into a product application. There's a lot of different examples like that. I don't have heaps of time to go through it, but if anyone's interested in other examples like this, I'm happy to share, because I look at them all the time and it's something we can all do. I don't use examples that are highly technical. They don't contain significant electronics and it's impossible to be able to implement. They're all things that are quite obvious and easy once you've seen someone do it. And I like to gain inspiration from the past, as I said. What doesn't work? How can we make things safer? How can we gain inspiration from things that change quality of life? So the Life Straw, I don't know if anyone's used these, but it's a plastic extrusion with an iodine filter. So again, it's not overly complicated. It's something we could all make. But when you use this, you do have to suck in quite a lot. But I use this at an Engineering Without Borders conference in a dirty fish tank. And it's pure water. The filter takes out all the bacteria, 99.9% of the waterborne bacteria, and you're able to create a product that has a real impact on people's lives. And that for me is super inspiring. I hope to do more projects around that social angle. And looking at examples here where it's not rocket science, you can actually implement some social good projects without huge upfront expenses. And there's also a commercial reality to what we do as well. So there's the ability to be able to create things clever and make money. We want to make money. The two products on the right-hand side are quite simple. A small plastic injection molded product, which can go on and make you quite a lot of money at a unit price that might be in the cents. And looking also at your passion areas, things you like, how can you create things that are better? And if you don't implement a product, you can do it yourself. So being able to do small changes and be able to implement change at low cost, but can actually create just a small little bit of innovation within your household and have fun. There's so many examples that are a bit quirky and crazy, but I like to use those particularly when I'm presenting to students, say we do this discipline, you spend money, go to university, gain your qualification, you want to be able to have fun doing it. My last example of this context is a bit more in-depth around James Dyson. So James Dyson, he is an industrial designer. A lot of people think he's a mechanical engineer, a British industrial designer that he basically came up with one engineering principle of centrifugal force. So all it is, it's spin in the air and creates suction, whether it goes out or in, it just depends on how he's orientated the engine. And he created the Dyson bagless vacuum. So prior to this product, there was no bagless vacuum on the market. They were all bagged vacuums, and I don't know if you remember what they were like. They were collecting dust. You would empty the bag, it would stink. It was messy, and he just saw that as an issue which he wanted to change, so he created this vacuum. And that's great, but things come and you get copied. So these products were sold in Audi for $99. So rather than be all frustrated, he comes up with something else. And this was in your bathroom just out there. So the air blade, it was a complete different configuration, and it took an original thought to change the orientation of your hand. So prior to this, you put your hands under a dryer, you'd press a button or wait for a sensor that would never work, and you'd always, by doing that, it indicates the product did not work. And he changed the orientation, and it strips the water away from your hand using gravity rather than evaporation. And it's a good product. However, then look at copied products. They keep coming and coming, so he keeps innovating. But also on his product, which was an observation I made, I saw this product at a restaurant, and it's a great product, and I thought, oh, this is such a revolution. But then you see photos like this, which I took in a bathroom, and you think it can still be better. It needs to be innovated upon. And looking at the material degradation here, when you've got a well of water, there's no reason it should be like this. If you translate to the automotive industry, which I did my PhD in surface finishing, there's technology that adheres paint to plastic components for automotive, and they last forever. It's incredible. So in the 1980s and late 90s and early 90s, all bumper bars for vehicles were metal because they could never adhere paint to the plastic components. They now have mastered that, and you can have plastic components that are painted to the same color as the metal chassis that will last just as long, if not longer. So that technology, in my opinion, should translate to those industrial products to ensure that the degradation doesn't occur. He created the fans, they got copied. He created the air blade, which has yet to be copied because it's quite sophisticated, but then the user I guess semantics and the intuitive nature of using this can be confusing. So every time I see these in bathrooms, there's usually a sign above them explaining how to use it. So for me, there needs to be some work in that space. Some air purification devices and his more recent range targeting a female audience around hair dryers and hair products, which are super expensive. But I have one in my house and they just work. But if you look at every product I just showed there, it's a product family, but it's using the exact same technology. It's all it is air coming in, spinning that air and pushing it out at a greater speed. So it's centrifugal force built within a range of products to make sure that he can keep innovating. So we look forward to the next product. I also like to look at things that don't work, and it's important to understand the good things, but it's also important to understand the bad things. So you take observations around exterior design, urban design, looking at the kitchen drawers not opening or a toilet brush and a plunger at the same side, which I wouldn't particularly want to touch. Communication designers in the room with product confusion and advertising, interior architects with stairs and mirrored toilet ceilings. And unfortunately, a photo I took in my own university where the exit button is directly above the emergency button. And that photo, which I also took at a Airbnb, where if you have to put a handwritten sign on a product explaining what that product is, then redesign it. It's not very good. And we understand the users, so it's really important that human side is who are we designing for, who are we creating things for. I like to look at that next generation that are fixated on their devices, the pain points, which are for everyone, the battery symbol flashing, things waiting to load, Wi-Fi not connecting, and that death wheel for the Mac users. These are things that are frustrations, and you see so much innovation addressing just these issues, particularly around batteries. So the portable battery chargers, we've now got wireless touch chargers, we've got battery packs that magnetically attach to the back of phones. There's a lot of innovation addressing the pain points of the consumer. And these are just 4 of many. So that's a way to draw inspiration, is to look at how people use products, understand what's frustrating about it, and even your own daily life, and have the skills to innovate it. So that's the thing that I love in terms of having the discipline background, and I have a team with me now. But if we see something that doesn't work, we have the ability to fix that through new innovative products. And for you guys, whatever discipline you've chosen, retain those skills and be proud of what you've spent your life building towards. But don't just keep your ideas in your head, because that's not good for anyone. An idea that's stuck in your head is not a good idea. An idea that translates into something of value, a commercial product, then that's where the innovation occurs. So the second half is my projects, and I can talk a bit more about, I guess, where I gained inspiration. But the first one is where it all started for me, and I was a bit unsure how this would work within the university context. The dean of my school at the time was quite opposed to me pursuing some projects within the university. He was telling me to publish, and I should have listened, because I need to build that part of my career up now. But at the same time, I was all of a sudden really enjoying my job, because I was spending time, I was awarded money from a company that wanted to innovate. That money went in under my name as research income, but I was able to use that money to pay for RAs and buy some of my time out to service these projects. And that's what I'm still doing today. And it's quite inspiring to be able to help companies innovate, especially companies such as this, which is a manufacturer in Burnie in Tasmania. And they had this $3.5 million facility, which is pictured up the top. They had a hydraulic metal punch and a laser machine, and it was a roofing company. And I just had a chat to this lady. It was complete random. And I was interested in her hydraulic punch. And I said, "What do you do with that?" Because I knew it was an expensive machine. And she was sort of a bit embarrassed to tell me, but she goes, "Oh, we do a few products, but to be honest, we only use it about 2 or 3 times a week. So 40% to 50% of this $3 million facility is going wasted." And I just chatted to her. I said, "How about I design products just for that machine?" And she gave me money, and that's where it started. It was pretty quick. And I started designing products for what was a stranded asset within a manufacturing organisation in Tassie. And it wasn't rocket science. I never try to act like anything I do is the greatest. It's just helping companies innovate and make money. And this was a perfect example where we created these graphic patterns that were punched into a sheet of 2mm aluminium, folded up, and created these screening products. We did decorative wall art and some fence height extension products. And they all went into Bunnings hardware. And that was great to see how quickly it translated from a simple idea using a machine they'd already invested in and generating new revenue. And they made $4.5 million profit through these screening products in the first year of sales. That's a substantial amount of money for something they'd already invested in. And it's important that I don't just show renderings. I want to show that you can't just fool people with beautiful images, because everyone can do that. You translate those images into products, put them on a fence, try to rip it down, understand how they work, package them up, and ultimately sell them. And the challenge with this project was the manufacturing was fine. We were manufacturing these en masse. They took 38 seconds per panel to manufacture, because it's just punched through. The issue was the logistics, getting them to Melbourne. From Burnie to Melbourne is twice more expensive than Shanghai to Melbourne. So that's a real problem with our freight. But also it was then selling them in Bunnings, which is our largest retail arm for hardware. Bunnings, you can't just go to Bunnings and sell your product. You have to go to their buying arm, which is called Zenexus. And they store the stock and distribute it to their 380 Bunnings stores around Australia. They take a 50% markup just to do that. And then Bunnings take a 100% markup just to put it on the shelf. So we were manufacturing these products for about $2, selling them for $4, making a $2 profit per product. Then Zenexus would make $4 profit and Bunnings would make $8 to $10 profit just by selling them. So you've got to understand that commercial reality. So I'm not trying to act like it's easy to get a product to market. It's actually very challenging. You need to make sure those costs are efficient. Another project which was quite an exciting project for me, my background and my PhD was in timber engineering. I spent 5 years at the CSIRO gluing bits of timber together and breaking them apart. I'm surprised I didn't go insane. But my job was to understand the material characteristics of various species and surface modification. But as an industrial designer, my role was to how do we turn the science and the innovation done at that level into commercial products. And I love working with timber and wooden products, and there's some new projects I'll be embarking on shortly, which is exciting. But this one, basically, I was dumped into a jungle in Papua New Guinea and I was working with balsa wood. So they said, oh, you know how to design things. Can you come to PNG? We've got an abundance of material. And balsa wood, which is common with model making, we're all aware of the very light wood, but 80% of balsa wood goes into wind turbine blades. And the market is quite niche. It only grows in Ecuador and Papua New Guinea. It's pollinated by one breed of bat and it has to be on volcanic soil on the equator. So you can't just grow balsa anywhere. But in PNG, they grow it from a seedling to a 50-metre tall tree with a 1.5 metre diameter in 5 years. So these things shoot up 10 metres per year. And it's like a weed, but after 5 years, you must harvest it. Otherwise, you internally rot the wood and the wood is useless. So it's a crop that needs to keep getting churned over. And when there's a decline in the market, so in wind turbine blades, they started to be replaced by synthetic polymers that was more stable and easier to access. All of a sudden there was an under demand and an oversupply of this material. So my role here was to create new demand. And this product, which was incredibly successful, was interior acoustic wall panels. You see them in this room. Behind that wall would be a sheet of MDF, medium density fiberboard. It's a toxic composite material with a ply skin. We were able to create the same type of product with a 100% sustainable regrowth balsa core, acoustic fabric and a hoop pine skin. And we won many sustainability awards for this, but we also did all the testing at RMIT. We outsurpassed the MDF boards in terms of acoustic properties, fire resistance and so forth. So this is an example of working with the materials, understanding the opportunity and creating a product it's not super desirable from an aesthetic point of view, but it was better than what existed and 100% sustainable. So that's the winner in this project. The third project to present, this is my hand and my paint bucket. I had a project with a tier 1 plastics manufacturer with the automotive industry, so MHG in Melton. And they were basically struggling to understand how to diversify into new markets. They had large-scale injection molding machines and a lot of equipment, but needed innovation and new products. And whilst I was looking at all of their equipment, I was painting my house. And I had this bucket on the market from Bunnings, which was the only small bucket available where you can transfer large quantity of paint into these small manageable buckets. And the handle became somewhat redundant because every time you held the handle, the paintbrush would fall in, the paint would distribute unevenly. So I found myself holding the underside of this small bucket the whole time I was painting. And at the same time, I'm working for a plastics company. I said, I should just design a new bucket. And that's what we did. So we were able to create a bucket that was purposefully designed as an ergonomic glove with a finger cavity, and it had a magnet on the inside of the bucket so you could magnetically attach the paintbrush, because all paintbrushes have a metal surround. And this was a really cool project, being able to quickly, literally within a week, design a product that was better than what existed on the shelves of Bunnings. And I used this prototype for my own painting. It was so much better. But then the translation of the clever idea into a commercial product never occurred in this instance, because the company were quite risk adverse and they didn't want to invest the $40,000 of tooling to make this a commercial reality. And they gave me back the CAD and the design. So I still own this idea. If anyone wants to give me 40 grand, you can join up. But it's something I would like to pursue. I think it's a good idea, but it takes money to create commercial products, and there's a reality behind that. Another project for this same group was the shopping baskets. You go in thinking you're going to just get a loaf of bread, you end up getting your dog food, juice, milk, and all of a sudden you've got this super heavy basket. So the idea here was to hold the basket in the fold of your arm, which is what I would naturally do, but then it would be too rectangular and not be ergonomic enough. So being able to create a curvaceous form to align with your body and then translate that into a commercial product, which is currently in your Coles. It was a nice transition, simple idea, but it was quite nice to be able to see that mature into a commercial reality. So there's a lot of simple ideas here, but turning them into an actual product is not at all simple. It's expensive. And my wonderful dog bed. So again, looking at where the ideas come from, again, diversifying capabilities within a manufacturing organisation. In this instance, it was a furniture design company, and they were very good timber manufacturers, creating high-end furniture and a lot of office fit-outs and shop fit-outs. Being able to work with their team to create a product range that was a product family. So it wasn't diverging too far away from their expertise, but diverging into a new market that was going up rather than going down. So Australian furniture industry has a 1% decline per annum. We looked at the pet products industry, which is over 7% increase per annum. And people have emotional attachment to their pets. They want to put money to their pets more so than they want to put to themselves. So we did a lot of research around that industry and the growth sector, and then created a range of high-end dog beds. And fortunately, this product is now very close to being manufactured through Country Road, which I know it's recorded, but shouldn't say that. But Country Road are embarking on a really large section within their organisation for pet products, because they've seen the potential in that market as well. They already have collars and little jackets, but soon they're going to be putting some high-end products in the market, particularly around dog beds, bowls and so forth. That's my dog as well. He's a bit cross-eyed and grey. And having a look at waste areas, certainly a real social responsibility we have as product designers. We're responsible for mass production and consumption. So you want to be able to put forward high quality materials, sustainable products and things that last. And the quality is the real thing here, where I even highlighted that it says a premium barbecue. We've all seen barbecues on Hard Rubbish collection, and I see them all the time. This is one of about 20 photos I've taken of Hard Rubbish. And it really drew my inspiration, where I had a company come to Swinburne, quite random. He just said, I want to innovate, and he made his money through importing Sub-Zero Wolf, the high-end German refrigerators and ovens. And he wanted to innovate an Australian product. And he basically came to me, it was a dream brief. He said, I've got money, I want to create a product, but I have no idea what that product is. So I always wanted to create a better barbecue, and I saw this as an opportunity, and I spoke to the client. I said, can we design Australia's best barbecue? And he goes, no, let's design the world's best barbecue. So he threw all this money at me, and we did that. We innovated this sleek design, which is currently getting manufactured a lot slower than what I would have hoped. But this is intended for the high-end market. It will retail for $15,000 to $20,000. So it's not something I can afford, but it sits in these outdoor kitchens. We looked at the different material finishes, how it actually opens up, and what we can actually do from a functionality point of view. It's the holy grail of barbecues. It's got a big induction sort of gas line within it, but it also self-cleans through an autoclave technology. So you hit a button or you operate this barbecue from your mobile phone and it will self-clean itself. And you look at the hood coming up and disappearing out the back, and being able to understand the beauty and the aesthetic, but also the high-end functionality and how it cooks. We've included a smoker because a lot of people like to smoke their meat, and be able to create multiple functionality through this sleek design. And you can roast chickens. I never thought I'd render chickens in my life, but they're pretty good renderings. And being able to innovate a real high-end product, I thought would be the ultimate job, but it's actually one of the hardest projects because there's a lot of expectation. Everything had to be perfect. And we're really seeing that now that we're going through the manufacturing phase for this. The client does not want to compromise on quality, but things are starting to become ridiculous in terms of cost. So that's where we're at with that project. But that was a really great example of observing hard rubbish and how do we innovate so we don't see these products on those hard rubbish nature strips. And co-designing with industry, Lisa's very well aware of this project. This has been my most commercially successful project, probably not the most beautiful project, but working very closely with this company called Atlite Skylights, who I still work with all the time. I was with them this morning, and they wanted to innovate a range of skylights for the building construction sector. And the issue they had was they were producing pretty low quality units that were sheet metal fabricated unit. They were very inefficient to manufacture. They weren't really providing any point of difference in the industry. So the homework that we did, which was the big research led behind this actual practice, was looking at where the points of difference are, and we targeted bushfire zoned buildings. So there was new regulations around any new builds in bushfire zoned areas must meet the bushfire strict standards. And there was only one product in Australia that was satisfying the skylight market, which is Velux, a German company manufactured in China. So we said, okay, there's our market. We create Australia's first fire-rated skylight, went through low fidelity prototypes, high fidelity prototypes with the real material, committed to extrusions, sent out 60 kilometres of extrusions, and then ultimately came up with a product we could test. We lit fire to simulate ember attack, and then had our frame, our window, on a 45-degree pitch, opened a furnace at 900 degrees ambient, and it had to sit there for 1 hour to pass the Australian standard for fire, the Bell 40 rating. That's my team, somewhat terrified whether this would pass or not. And we passed the test. You see the clock, it's sitting over 1 hour, and the glass cracks and expands, but importantly, nothing fell on the inside of the dwelling, and that's how you satisfy that standard. We did water penetration tests, we did thermal, we did hailstones the size of cricket balls shot out of a cannon, and then launched our project, which was a pretty big journey, but didn't realise the impact this would have on the organisation once we launched it. They were so proud of this product, they embroidered the Swinburne logo on their shirts, which I thought was a bit weird. But we were able to satisfy all these standards and create Australia's best fire-rated, designed and manufactured product, a company in Cheltenham. That's what they were manufacturing. That's what we created. It was a better design. And 80% of everything this company now produces is our skylight. And you look at the efficiencies in production. The first one was 23 hours and the second one is 4 hours. It was an aluminium extruded system that was much easier to manufacture. They doubled the size of their company, and we've since won 3 good design awards for this product, which is really nice. And I like that project because this company is so proud of this product and it's the best in the world. And I'm so satisfied that we tested the Velux model, which is the equivalent from Germany, and ours surpassed the test of VLUX. So I can confidently say we've created the best fire-rated skylight in the world. And this company's booming. They're making so much money through this product. It's an Australian-owned company, which is nice, that social angle where we can give back and use our clever, innovative design for these guys to really flourish is great. Now, innovation on budget, which is another project that I was quite passionate about. A company approached me that was importing lighting from China. It was just track down lights. They were basically getting the componentry in, putting these lights together, packaging them up, and then on selling them for about $7 profit per light. And this guy I met at a conference was quite active, saying, I really want to innovate. I said, how much money do you have? And he goes, I don't have much money. So and I said, that's fine. Let's think of a project that does not cost too much money in the outset, and hopefully you can generate new ideas. So we looked at 3D printing, and that was where it was my idea, just thinking, if we want to innovate a range of lighting, but you don't have money to do all the tooling and create all these products, then could we not use low-end 3D printing? Because lights, you don't really look at them when they're on a ceiling. They're too high up. When they're on, you're not staring at the globe. So you can get away with subtle imperfections. So we did a massive study on all these low-end printers. So low-end, I'm talking $3,000 below, and a whole heap of experimentation around the heat sinks and the componentry, some organic forms, and how we can really push the boundaries of design when we're not limited to a two-part mold injection mold. And some crazy things looking at the wall thickness, the raft, the build angles of these products. And you can see severe imperfections on that circular shape. So how do we then refine that and really work with this low-end equipment to create a more refined product? And at the same time did all the engineering work to make sure these lights weren't going to just melt off the ceiling. And we're able to then keep experimenting and prototyping to ultimately come up with these sleek designs, and came up with 5 lights, front view and the back view. But really exploiting the 3D printing. So with injection molding, you got 2 parts and it comes apart. You can't have any undercuts. The wall thicknesses need to be even. So here we purposefully designed them so they could not be manufactured by any other process. And that was that real design difference. So we're able to create geometries that looked different to everything that existed. As I said, the surface finish didn't need to be perfect. But the best thing about this project was, if no one liked the design, you just didn't print it. And that was easy. You didn't have $100,000 of tooling going to waste. You just didn't print it. But this company now has 50 Zortrack machines running 24/7, printing these lights, and there's so much demand. And we've kind of got ourselves in a situation where, because we design them in such a way that can only be 3D printed, we can't translate it to an injection molded process, which we would do for efficiencies, but they just buy more 3D printers. And as I always say, translate those renderings into actual products. So these are photos of the actual lights in situ, and some different machining on the heatsink and anodizing that back aluminium component for another point of difference. So that was a cool product. It was published in The Age, and it was quite exciting to be able to innovate this company, and we still keep in touch. He's very enthusiastic, and he's really leading the charge for low-end 3D printing used as a commercial output. And there's a lot of these lights now in all of the Audi showrooms around Australia. Audi as in the good car, not the shit supermarket. And I then translate to this second last or third last project, which is important to show that I've put some cool projects there, and it's wonderful. Everyone thinks it's great, but geez, they're not always great. I think Lisa's seen the back end of some of the disasters I've had. I've had 55 projects and 3 complete disasters, where I'm talking about the client wasn't happy for various reasons, people didn't pay, things didn't work, the standards weren't met. And this was my first disaster, which I learned a lot from, and I want to show you why it was a disaster. Because I was quite new, and there was a lone inventor. He was running a one-man manufacturing company in Bayswater, and he wanted to create a cyclone-rated window. So he was looking at an area that I had a lot of expertise in because my PhD outcomes were fenestration products and windows and doors. So I knew a lot about how to create good windows, but I was working with timber and he wanted to work with PVC, which I didn't realize at the time, but later realized he had a relationship with this frame manufacturer. And that's where it started to become tricky because we created this really good product, which was essentially housing this innovation that he created. So this is a sheet of polycarbonate with a hook, and polycarbonate is 250 times stronger than glass. So it doesn't, nothing really penetrates it. But if you drill a hole in it or fracture it, it will then split and become really problematic. But his innovation, which he has a patent on, was turning that little hook mechanism in and engaging that hook within a frame so that when a projectile hit the frame, the glass, it would not shatter, and you would then be able to pass AS 4027, which is an Australian standard buried in my memory because we could not pass it, because we engineered this product that was good to go, which is this. You can see this overlapping. This was our design. We made it to a level where this was definitely going to pass the test. All the FEA, all the simulation, this was really good. He then said, no, we must house your design into this existing off-the-shelf frame. And it was virtually impossible because there was not enough engagement of that polycarbonate hook. And we went back and forward for over 8 months trying to convince him. And he said, no, you've signed up, you must meet this standard. And that's the big learning. Do not ever claim you're going to meet a standard in research projects because the nature of research is unknown, and you can't claim you're going to hit a target that you don't know if you can hit or not. I know I could hit that target if he didn't change his mind. But anyway, this was the test. And if you see this bit of wood slicing glass, ultimately I created a window with a giant hole in it, which was never going to pass the test. So you learn from those mistakes, and I've genuinely learned. There's certain learnings from previous projects that have gone pear-shaped where I shouldn't have let it go on too long. You've just got to make a call and cut it off. But sometimes that was difficult during COVID years when my clients were in Malaysia or even in Brisbane. No one understood that I was working out of my daughter's bedroom, and that was pretty tough. So there was some challenges to get past, but now we're beyond that and things are looking really positive. So just to finish up, 2 more quick ones. This was a project with ACME, Australian Centre for the Moving Image, where we needed to create a 100% sustainable product. So the innovation here was they were giving out plastic cards, which the public were starting to have backlash, saying this needs to be recyclable. We went a step further. We made it compostable, which is much better. So the inks and dyes do not leach in the soil. It's a series of tests. The innovation here was creating a 100% compostable product, which has an NFC chip. It identifies your journey around the exhibition and then gives you the log of that on the website. This is given out free to every visitor of ACME. But we made 2 million of these. So manufacturing at scale is substantial. We had a whole container of this product come into Melbourne, and we're still producing these for ACME as we speak. A lot of medical products. This was a project looking at how drugs are administered through the nasal cavity. And all it was 3D printing a nasal cavity in a clear material so the scientists could see how the drugs went through that nasal cavity. And that was a really nice, quick project going into that med tech space. And my very last one is showing where you can really have fun. So we were looking at advocacy for the aging, and aging population need to get out and do stuff, and they like to play golf, but they don't like walking around an 18-hole golf course. So we've currently made this product, which is going through production, which is really exciting. It's going to be made in Malaysia. But this was a hybrid golf buggy. So it held the clubs and it was autonomous. So it would follow the golfer around the golf course. And if they were tired of walking, they could then stand on it like a chariot, and then it would autonomously ride the golfer around the golf course, and it would have GPS coordinates and geofencing to enable you not to ride into a creek and so forth. So, and you could take control of it. And we have fun. This is so cool. Awesome, good job. Prototype, but being able to then move that through significant refinement engineering work to get it made. And that's it. This is my second last slide. It just shows a bit of a map. So that's me and my team working directly with the manufacturers, but it's nice sort of closed loop where we innovate the standard design process, go back, generate something that's cool, makes money, and the manufacturer then uses that money to reinvest in new products and hopefully come back to me, like Atlite Skylights, who I've now had about 11 projects with, which is really exciting. And that's how you can sustain your research assistants and the team behind you, because this is certainly not all me. I have a pretty strong team now with me, but they're instrumental in servicing the projects, and my job now is to keep the projects on track and get new projects. Hopefully that was somewhat useful. Thanks so much for the invitation. I really appreciate that, and certainly happy to stick around and have some wine and beer or cheese. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Annette Markham, and I'm a professor of media and communication here at RMIT. And I love that you're drinking from a designed water bottle there. Very, yeah, that's great. Yeah. I'm curious what kind of advice you give to first year higher degree research students about what does that trajectory look like from where they might begin to where you are? I mean, you have your own history, but what you're talking about here is just really applied, very advanced, really high speed, high delivery, like really spectacular. So what kind of advice do you give to people at that early stage, at the earliest stages?
Thanks, that's a great question. You're right about the high speed. It is pretty difficult to do this within a university environment. And I've had to educate students that want to do this, but even colleagues and university around the fast-paced nature of these projects and the slowness of the administration process. But that's another thing. But the main advice, I do a lot of HDR training. It's my current job to help the PhD cohort know what's going on. My advice would be to know what you're doing in the PhD, and that comes down to a good structure early on. So if it's early days of a PhD, it would be putting a lot of effort. I'm talking 3 months. All of my PhD students, first 3 months is structuring their PhD, and that might sound simple, but I asked them to structure every subheading, every tertiary heading, every chapter for the whole PhD. Things will naturally change, but if they wanted to do practice-based like this, that needs to be understood, because at some stage in the PhD journey, they need to make a call what they're wanting to do. I like to have an element of practice as an exemplar of the PhDs, but it's not the PhD. You need the rigorous research that leads to something that you can as a demonstrator model. So I don't have perfect answers, but for me, it's structuring the PhD so they know, the PhD student knows what they're about to embark on, but then they can have the back end exemplar product as a demonstrator of their research built into that preliminary structure. But it can be hard. PhDs can be tricky because I do get backlash from my own students saying I can't frame my discussion chapter until I've got any results. And I say, well, you still need to know what the results would look like and how you can, what's the discussion chapter going to look like? It'll change, but for me, it's important to really map that out. And if you're interested, I've got a big Excel spreadsheet with just that as an example for PhD students.
So my name is Abdul. I'm doing a undergrad degree in Bachelor of Business Marketing, and one of my subjects is actually product innovation. So I wanted to ask you, in terms of taking products to the market, what are some common restrictions that you face when you take products to the market after the ideation and the concept phase?
Thanks. That's a great question. Have you heard of the Valley of Death? Look it up, and I was going to put that in here. So when you're about to embark on any of these projects, you need money, so you're instantly in deficit. And that money keeps shrinking as you're prototyping and refining and then investing in tooling and production. And that's the valley of death, where your money is disappearing. But in order to get out of that valley of death, that product needs to go to market. And that's what we teach all students on. How do you avoid or mitigate the valley of death? It's always going to happen with product innovation. So for me, it would be a lot of that testing at the front end around how can you create something that you know is going to sell? Because a lot of companies have failed with design, and the statistics are pretty alarming. 1% of all products go to market. So there's 99% of investment wasted. So the advice I would give is really understand, is that end product going to sell? Do as much user testing and try to create high fidelity prototypes at a low expense, which you can do now with rapid prototyping technology, to try to replicate what your final manufactured product would look like at a much lower expense. Get that out to the users and test it and see what they think. And if it comes back and no one wants it, then don't commit to invest in it. And there's platforms such as Indiegogo and Kickstarter, which I'm a bit skeptical of because you're disclosing all your IP without any sales. But that's how this started. So my student created a thin bottle, which is not rocket science, but he put it on Kickstarter, gauged the audience, had $650,000 of crowd-funded support. That was enough for him to tool up and create the product. He's since gone through Kickstarter again for medal equivalents, which have been quite successful. So he was able to go through that channel, but it was at a lower expense to gauge the market interest without committing hundreds of thousands to a failed product.
Hi there, my name is Jinju Huang from the School of Media and Communication. Would you be able to tell us a bit more about your staying in Seoul? You said that you were inspired by a different culture. So I'm really interested in that. So how a different culture may have inspired you as a designer and as a person. Thank you.
I love talking about this. It's a great story. Thanks for the question. My experience was like super overwhelming. I was young and I received a letter in the mail saying I could go to Lim Kok Wing University or Hong Ik University, and I chose Hong Ik because it was more money. It was $3,000 instead of $1,500, and I was really naive. I thought I was going to Hong Kong because I read the word Hong, and I all of a sudden was in Seoul, and my first week of classes is where it just instantly clicked, because Hong Ik University is arguably one of the best design schools in Asia. You got some good schools in Singapore, Hong Kong, PolyU in Hong Kong, but Hong Ik University is the best design school in Korea. And week one, I was in a class where the professor was speaking Korean and all of the classmates were speaking Korean. And I was instantly culture shock, but then they pinned their work up. And we'd just started the semester, so I didn't even know what we were working on, but obviously it was homework they had from the previous year. And the whole wall was full of the most amazing sketches I've ever seen. And I was instantly terrified because my skills were pretty ordinary. And I remember just staring at this wall and thinking, I need to be better. And that was being exposed to a high quality design school. And luckily, not luckily, unfortunately for me, I had no friends initially. I had no TV, no family. It was 2002, so we didn't have iPhones. I had a Discman with Eminem and Pearl Jam. They were my only CDs that I took. And I went back to the dormitory that night and I just picked things up and started drawing them because I was bored. I had nothing to do. And I remember drawing my alarm clock and my headphones, the old school headphones. And I started to develop those sketching skills. And then in class, really tried to link with the classmates because they were so talented. And I went from by far the worst in the class to the middle of the class. I was never the best, but that was just forcing myself in a different environment. From a personal point of view, I also met my wife there, so that was awesome. But she was the only person in my class that spoke English, so I latched onto her and never let her go. But she worked grew up in the US, so she's American Korean, now Australian. But that was nice to find a personal side of things which made being in Korea more comfortable. But from a professional point of view, exposing yourself to incredibly talented designers made me a much better designer myself. Thanks very much. You're not Korean, are you? Oh, that's good, because I didn't want you to test my Korean, because it's not very good. I'm struggling with English, as you probably just heard.
Thanks. I'm Helen Addison-Smith. I'm a research fellow here at RMIT. I was interested to see you being inspired by hard rubbish, and I just wondered, are you often inspired by waste?
Yeah, I'm not inspired, but I'm saddened by it, genuinely, especially all the IKEA junk that you see all the time. And fast furniture is a next thing I'd like to embark on. It's worse than fast fashion, but yeah, I don't really know how to respond. I see it as inspiration from how do we eradicate the piles of consistent waste. So you always see different things on hard rubbish, but what you always see is Billy bookshelves and barbecues, and you see that consistently. So how do we create products that are more valuable, but at a cost point that people can afford? Because you can't just go off and create $15,000 barbecues and expect everyone to buy it. There's a reason people purchase $100 barbecues, galore barbecues. So it's around education as well, but I have to be sensitive to the fact that not everyone can afford good things, but how can we as designers create products that can be reused, recycled? There was a lot of sustainable product examples that I've put forward, and that's hard. It's hard to source the materials and create manufactured products at scale that can be degraded over time rather than landfill. So I don't know if inspiration's the word, but certainly saddened and try to find the opportunities in hard rubbish. I'm not a freak. I don't just look at hard rubbish collections all the time, but I do certainly observe what people chuck out, and it's the consistency is where I see the product innovation.
I had two questions. I was trying to decide which one to ask, and I think thanks to you, I've just merged them. But no, I was really interested, Blair, because you're giving us examples from your design research for the Social Change Symposium, where we've got people in the room, presumably from a variety of backgrounds. So I was thinking about what are the insights in how you understand the design research and that process, and that process of generating new knowledge, right? That you think would be useful to people working in other disciplines. But I'm going to sort of add a specific part to that, which whenever we're talking about design research, and it's, I suppose, in the, like the social sustainability and the working with SMEs on the one hand, so there's the community, sort of economic and social sustainability that's happening there. And then there's the product production. And as you say, so much of it is thinking about how can you make it biodegradable, but it points to that systemic complexity, and fixing one piece, like helping an SME from going under, can create other problems of generating stuff, right? And the more you do research, the more you recognize that and are able to work with it. But I'm wondering about, what advice do you give your PhD students or the HDR students generally about being able to recognize the systemic implications for any small change they might try to make?
Yeah. It's a great question. Look, my response is every action has a reaction, but you can't be perfect and you can't do everything. What I see is my real social angle is keeping Australian manufacturing alive and keeping people in jobs, but you want to be responsible around the output. There's quite a few publications I've done recently. Design Studies one a couple of years ago with a colleague profiling the Skylight and how we use the co-design engagement. So that's certainly something out there. And another Design Studies, which will come out next week, around how do we engage SME manufacturers who have never engaged with design before. And that was quite a challenging thing to put together, but I hope that learnings from those traditional forms of research within the journal publications can help others understand little aspects and little tips, but I would never sit here and say, I'm going to give you the answer for everything. You can make companies profitable and not create disastrous products. It's quite difficult. So you need to take your angle. My angle is keeping manufacturing strong in Australia and keeping people in jobs. And I think that's nice, but I'm not naive to the fact that we do create products that can be put on hard rubbish, but it's a difficult one to answer that I'm not perfect. But the papers that I've been publishing lately, Lisa and I did one as well around another project, but I'm really enjoying that. I spent 10 years, 2012 really to 2020, so that's 8 years. I spent those 8 years chasing the next project. It's hard. You have your team that are on these rolling contracts. If you don't bring the money in, you lose your team and you've got to start again. I've now got stability in the team. They're all permanently employed with me. And the last 2 years, I'm a lot more active publishing from the work that I've done. And it's quite inspiring. It's a reflection on all this hard work. How can I put forward some tips and tricks? And there's a lot of papers that in quality journals, which as we all know are not easy to get into, and some of it's frustrating, but they're good pieces that are giving one niche angle about one project. And you build those together and you're starting to tell a bit of a story, and we can write a book one day maybe, which you can write because you're way better. Thanks. Thanks.
And thanks again.
Thanks.